Hey, and welcome back. In this video, we are going to have a lot of fun reading release notes of Unity 5.6. A little bit more fun than it sounds. It's full of shiny stuff, new things you haven't seen before. There are some changes to the way that navigation is laid out inside Unity and a few other things we're going to take note of. I've also upgraded to Visual Studio 2017, so all change here. I should stress, and I'm going to stress it more than once in the video, that you don't have to do this update right now if you don't want to. It's going to take an hour or two. You could do a lot more of this section before you update, but when you have the time and you're ready to do it and leave your machine churning away installing it, then go ahead and do it. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. Pretty simple. You go to Unity's website, download the installer, check the options that I'll talk you through, and leave it to it. So, all right, I shall see you in there. Welcome back. Welcome to Section 3. Well, Ben's part of Section 3 anyway. Hope you enjoyed Rick talking to you about the direction in which we're going. So now I'm going to help us go in that direction from a coding and technical point of view. So, firstly, what's this error message I've got on my screen here then? Well, while you've been away, I've been upgrading to Unity 5.6. You don't have to do that, by the way. It's going to take you an hour or two to do because, well, it just takes a while to download and install, especially if you switch to Visual Studio 2017. So no necessity necessity to do it right now, but I'm going to show you what I've done and that I have done it, and then you'll know and be able to decide for yourself when you want to do it. So I'm going to leave Unity just changing the project from 5.5 to 5.6. And while it's doing that, it's going to take a little while to recompile scripts and mess around. I'm going to show you a few things. Firstly, I'm going to show you the options I used when I upgraded to Unity 5.6. So the things that matter, that are of any interest, is, of course, I'm including the standard assets. I think that was ticked by default anyway, because we often dive into them. But I've also bothered with the example project. I don't expect we'll use it right here, but it is nice to have a few example projects to dive into sometimes. It can be a really quick and easy way of seeing how things have already been done. So I'm doing the example project. I've also gone for Visual Studio Community 2017. No particular reason to upgrade, but why not? If it's being officially supported by Unity like this now, then why not just use it? I was having a few issues with my previous Visual Studio. I don't mind upgrading. Of course, I'll lose some of my extensions and plugins like that semantic colorizer that I had, but of course you can reinstall that. I'm also leaving out Android, iOS, tvOS build support because we're not planning on building our game to that, but I am likely to build for Mac. And I may build for Linux. The only thing is I don't have a Linux machine here right now. Well, I do. I've got a Raspberry Pi in the corner, but I think that might struggle with our RPG. And then just the right-hand diagram here is just the same stuff. Just scroll down, as you can probably see. The only other stuff at the bottom of the list is the WebGL build support. Going to be making sure we've got that. If you haven't got any of these things, then when you do decide to upgrade, or when you see me using WebGL build, then go ahead and install that. I've also put on Facebook Game Room. We may play with pushing this game to Facebook for sharing with other students. Could be a really quick and easy way. If it builds and runs nicely on Facebook Game Room, then, well, maybe we'll use that as a way of getting early feedback from our customers. So they're the build options, or the install options I used for Unity 5.6. The other thing you need to do, and I can show you this inside Unity if necessary, but it is that you need to tell Unity that you are using a different IDE. And the place you do that is you go into Preferences. Let's just go and see, actually, if Unity's finished. Hasn't yet. But you go into Preferences, Unity Preferences, then you've got External Tools tab here, and then you've got a editor at, where is it? External Script Editor section, and then that should populate with Visual Studio 2017 if you've allowed it to install Visual Studio 2017. I also removed Visual Studio 2015 altogether. I just went into my add remove programs and got rid of it. I'm kind of altogether moving over to 2017. I didn't want the confusion of whether I'm running 2017 or 2015, etc. So that's that. Now, when it comes to Visual Studio 2017, let's just take a quick look at that. It's very similar, actually. I'm noticing a couple of differences, and we'll look through the release notes probably in a moment as well. But if I was to open, I don't know, any project, say a Unity example project here, you can see it's pretty much the same. You should, if you install it through Unity, still under the View menu have the Unity Project Explorer, but it doesn't matter if you don't. You can use the Solution Explorer. You can just see that the Solution Explorer is a bit confusing and that the Unity Project Explorer is a lot more focused on the sort of stuff you might want. The other point is that realistically, how do we get to our scripts? We don't do it here anyway. We do it through Unity most of the time. So this isn't that important. One thing I have done is I've gone to Tools and External Tools and reinstalled, where is it? Tools and Options. No, it's the plugins and extensions. I'm forgetting entirely where they are. Extensions and updates. There you go. Tools, extensions, and updates. And I have installed Semantic Colorizer again, that thing that we had installed before. I've installed it because I want to be able to see my member variables stick out like this Why? Because, well, we'll talk about that as we start making our code even cleaner. I just really want to make sure that classes don't have too much state at the top and that most of the methods in a class use the member variables. If the methods aren't using the member variables, you've got to ask whether you want to split the class up. So we'll get to that when we get to it, but I like to have them highlighted. It's optional for you. The other thing I'm seeing in 2017 is that by default, you've got these hang lines here, which just show you what level of indentation you're at, these little dots. Otherwise, looks very similar and will behave very similarly. I have provided you with links in the resources both to what's new in Visual Studio 2017. This is not at all a comprehensive list of what's changed since 2015. The main things that catch my eye that are relevant to us are the tests, the way that tests are integrated even more tightly. We might start introducing tests in this RPG, formal tests. Once we've learned interfaces, we can start thinking about tests and mocks and all this sort of business. They're cool. The only thing is that in a framework like a game engine, sometimes trying to do automated testing is quite hard because our code is all at the forefront. It's all at the boundary between what we write and the engine. It tends to be in a mono behavior. It tends to be a bit difficult to test, but it's not impossible. The other thing is that Unity itself provides testing facilities, and it still hasn't finished loading. Yes, it has. Which we can explore possibly later under Window Test Runner. But we'll get to that as and when we have some logic that feels like something that would be useful to test through automation. So where was I? I was talking you through Visual Studio, that's it. And its change notes. What else do I see here that's relevant? Collaboration, integration, leveling up your language. There's nothing else I'm seeing in here that's too relevant to the way that we're using Visual Studio with Unity. So that's it from the standpoint of Visual Studio. So what I'd like to do now, I've given you a link to this. This is the What's New in Unity 5.6. Quite a long document. I wouldn't spend too long on it. It's quite interesting reading for some people. You like to see all the fancy new stuff. Broken down into sections. You'll see them at the top right of the document. Features, changes, improvement. API changes is an important one to look at. What's going to break. But what I want you to do is just read that now, basically. Read it, with a purpose. So spend a few minutes getting familiar with that. What's relevant to your project now is a good question to ask yourself. What might break? What might change? What's relevant right now? What might become relevant soon? Just thinking a little bit ahead in terms of what Rick's talked to you about or what we're doing next. Try and think about what might be relevant. What can you do now that you couldn't do before? That's definitely worth thinking about. Maybe you had a block in the past and now Unity's provided you with a facility that you didn't have before. And why not go over to the community and share what you're most excited about? What changes in Unity 5.6 are you most excited about? It's quite a comprehensive update. So go ahead, do that. Take a look at those release notes now, and then I'll just highlight the things that I think matter in a moment. Okay, welcome back. So let's just dive down this document, and I'm just going to literally highlight the things. So a lot of 2D stuff, not too relevant to this game. Here's one. There's a low-level change to the API for nav mesh building. So we can do more with the nav meshes at runtime. This is the basic point here, and we can have multiple instances of nav meshes. So when I see something like this, we should just bear that in mind and also just say to ourselves, does our nav mesh still work, for example? If you look at the navigation tab inside Unity here now, it's a little different, isn't it? We're seeing agents, areas, bake, and it's just slightly different. I can't exactly remember what's different about it. Just the way these are laid out is a bit different. So get used to that. Make sure your nav meshes still work, and then it's just bear in mind that there's more flexibility than we had before with nav meshes. I think that's it for the moment. That's all we really need to do. Then there's all sorts of other changes. I'm not going to go through all these. I'm just going to try and look for things that seem really relevant. Remember, next time you're resizing a collision area, a volume, that you can use different button combinations to try and make it easier for yourself. That's probably relevant. Visual Studio 2017 installs automatically, and I'll show you that setting I talked about before. I think, if I can remember where it is. Where is it? It's not under build settings. It's under preferences, I think. Edit preferences, external tools, and Visual Studio 2017 should be in that list now. If you use the Unity installer to do it, Facebook as a build platform, lots of new stuff on the lighting, which will be great, make things prettier. Global illuminations getting nicer and nicer. That's where we calculate bounces of light to make things look more realistic. Also, some improvements to the particle effects. So when Rick's playing with the particle effects, maybe to do more than we could do before. A bunch more 2D stuff and 2D physics. You can see it goes on and on and on. So what else is there to be concerned with? Well, there's the changes section. That's a bit too detailed for me to go through with you in detail. So I'm going to just dive down to the API changes and note what not necessarily has been added, but deprecated would be a good word to even search for. What has been deprecated? Only one thing. Animator override controller.clips. Now, this may become relevant to us moving forward. We're going to probably be using an animator override controller to swap out the animations that the that the player has, remember that we had this animator, and if we had grounded an attack, and if you remember, the attack just had a very simple default animation attack, an unarmed kick in this case. But depending on the weapon that the player's holding, we're going to be swapping out this attack animation at runtime, and we may well be using an animator override controller to do that. Now, I hope that I'm not telling you stuff that we've already done. Let me just have a quick look under characters, player. No, we haven't done that yet. That was in the prototyping. But that might make a difference to that. I'm not seeing any other words deprecated, so I'm not too worried. I hope you had an interesting look through yourself. What are you most excited about in Unity 5.6? What can you do for your game that wasn't available there before? And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Just to recap, you don't have to upgrade to Unity 5.6 now. We're not going to be using any of its features for a while, but at some point you're going to want to upgrade. So if you've got the time, an hour or two to do it now. Otherwise, do it later on in your learning journey somewhere in this section. You'll be fine through the whole section, I think, without necessarily upgrading. But if you start to see differences in what I'm doing compared to what you're doing, obviously take the plunge.